Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by the members of oldschoollane.blogspot.com and is associated with manicexpression.webs.com, home of the podcast plays. Check out The Confession of Danny Ultree, written and edited by Mark D. Nicholson.
Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. Pour a cheerful toast and fill it, happy anniversary. But be careful you don't spill it, happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary.
Welcome aboard to Old School Lane Casual Chats, episode number 5. Don't mind the congestion, it's me, Patricia. I'm just really sick.
Don't mind Patricia, I'm just really sick.
Yes, Kevin's sick too. He hasn't gotten over his cold since Casual Chats episode 2 of Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it. I feel like Patty. I'm starting to grow long hair. I'm starting to wear a blue shirt, and well, that's really it. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, and I'm starting to feel like Kevin. I'm losing my hair, I have glasses on, and I have a whole bunch of toys in the background.
Did you say I'm losing my hair?
You know, because of your short haircut.
I'm losing my hair? You trying to tell me I'm going bald?
No, I'm just saying the sickness is making you lose.
I can't believe you said that.
The sickness is making you lose your head. I'm not saying that you're bald.
I can't believe you said that, you smart ass. Okay, alright. I can't believe you said that.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. Anyway, today's episode, we're going to be talking a lot of things, but first of all, a few days ago, it was our anniversary. Old School Lane celebrated its first year. We were partying, we were excited, we did a whole bunch of things that
I don't know about you, Patty, but you were puking your brains out from being sick and picking your nose and picking your butt with poop in it. I was just sitting back relaxing, enjoying the nice champagne and fruit punch and hamburgers with cheese.
I was enjoying that too. I had a really nice champagne.
In the bathroom, puking your brains out?
No, not really so, per se. It was basically, I didn't remember most of the things that happened. I just woke up, then afterwards you were laughing at my face and said, "Oh man, you would not believe the things you did last night. You howled like a wolf, you snorted, you sounded like a horse, you picked off a lot of things, you puked, and then you passed out."
I don't remember that.
Exactly, we were both hungover.
I was surprised you didn't go on a rampage. I mean, she was just really upset because Patty loves anything with 50-foot women and also people getting shrunk by women, which I don't know, Patty. That's very weird.
Yeah, I know it is weird, but then again, I am a very weird person.
Oh, we all know that.
Yes, in fact, I'm so weird, in fact, that today I'm going to go shopping and I'm going to walk around in my Wienerville shirt. I want to see how many people can be able to recognize this shirt. If anybody says, "Oh my god, it's Wienerville from Nickelodeon," I will seriously give them a high five and a hug.
Well, Patty, if I remember correctly, you told me you're not wearing your Wienerville shirt. Right now, you're wearing a shirt that says "Kiss the Fool."
What?
So what are you talking about? You're wearing a shirt that says "Kiss the Fool."
Kiss the Fool? No, I don't have anything like that. If
Yeah.
that were to be the case, I'd never have a boyfriend.
Why would you say that?
Because why would somebody want to kiss a fool? It's not like kissing a court gesture.
All right. Well, Patty is now officially the court jester. She will now tell you a story about how she was born. Literally, when she was a baby, she was dressed up as a court jester.
Yes. Well, let's see. It all started in the circus, and everybody was surrounded by me. And the first distinction sound I could hear was the clown's horns honking. And then all of a
sudden... Did you do that?
Yeah.
Do that again.
Yeah, it's basically, it comes from the throat, and then afterwards you just like little...
I didn't ask for a life lesson. I asked you to do it. Do it.
Okay.
Do it one more time. Do it for Brad Club 180. I'll do it for Cindy. Sydney. Do it for James.
Ooh, good.
Oh, I sense a little disturbance in the throat. Do it for less. Do it for less. Okay, now everybody, okay, this is a Christmas present. Whoever wants Patty to sound like a horn, write her a message, and she'll do it for you for free.
Or maybe a horse. I could do a horse.
Do a horse. Okay, now you gotta do that for Sydney. Do it for Sydney. She loves horses.
She does?
I don't know. Just fucking do it. Okay, now do it for Brad Club 180.
Okay, that's enough. Okay, moving on. So,
excuse me. You have to do it for the man. He asked you this very kindly. Now do it for James. Now we gotta do it for Les. But do it like a musical type of thing. Like a horse doing a musical, because Les is a music kind of guy.
Okay. There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the future Frank Welker.
No way, man.
Yeah, you are. You could be his daughter, if anything, or his wife. The guy does voices like this, like no other. All right, do it for Sydney one more time, because she wanted you to do it.
Yeah, I'm not to mean bragging or anything like that. I don't know if I can do those monster voices. The only monster voice that I can think of is if I go subconsciously into my mind, and if I think of like really mean thoughts, like the Incredible Hulk mixed with like some sort of werewolf, it'd be like.
Okay, now you've got to do it for Sydney. She wants you to do it.
Nah, it actually kind of hurts the throat a little bit, so moving on. Anyways, enough of that. So, okay, so we got a lot of questions from our friends at Manic Expression. We want to recap on some of the things that we did of this year in Old School Lane. And then afterwards, we're going to be a much more lighter tone compared to the episode that we did talking about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
Whatever Patty said.
Yeah. So let's just skip into the questions and then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
First question comes from MovieFan12, and he says, I've greatly enjoyed your tribute to Nickelodeon, and for the longest time, even before you started your Nick tribute, I've been considering doing a history of the Disney Channel. In no way I want to rip you guys off, but what do you think was the hardest part of doing this tribute, and any advice for someone that wishes to do something similar?
Well, I'll start off with that.
Go ahead.
The hardest part about doing the tribute was contacting people, and the hardest part about doing the tribute was contacting people, because as Patty and I have said, we contacted a lot of people that were involved in Nickelodeon, not just the actors and voice actors, but crew members and creators, and a lot of them, have lives, we understand that, but are also doing other things. Some of them have stopped doing acting. Some of them have gone to pursue other endeavors. So, it was really hard. We were able to find them, but a lot of them just didn't get back to us.
Yeah, we must have
contacted a lot of people, like about maybe 5 or 10 times, or 5 or 6 times, and we don't want to harass them. But that's the hardest part, was just contacting people. And some people did get back to us, but they didn't get back to us until like later on. And those who did contact us never got back to us. We would contact them, and we spoke to either them or a person that represents them or an agent, and they got back to us. But then they just, I don't know what happened. They just forgot, or maybe they were busy. So that's the hardest part is contacting people, because we just didn't want to do a blog that just talks about the shows. We also and give our opinions. We wanted to also interview people who worked on this stuff, and were involved.
Yeah, and
my advice for you is, if you want to do a tribute like ours and you want to do the Disney Channel, what I would do is make a list of all the shows and movies that you want to do, Make a list of everything that was aired from the Disney Channel from now to whatever time you want to stop. Watch everything. One thing that's people don't like is when you talk about something like a movie or a show and you never seen it and you're just doing opinions. You have to have facts to base your stuff on. If you just do a show, like say Patty was doing a review on the Brothers Flood. Now Patty, or I should say Pelswick, because that was Patty's least favorite Nickelodeon show. If Patty just
actually, my least Nickelodeon show was it's either a tie between the Brothers Flub or But Ugly Martians. Pelswick wasn't bad; it was just basically forgettable.
So say Patty was to do a review of the Brothers Flub.
There you go.
All right, and she just said how much she hated this show. If she didn't say like who starred it, how it got developed, or what was the thing, it would just be really opinionative, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but you have to have facts. So if you're going to talk about how much you like Lizzie McGuire, or how much you despise Xenon Girl of the 21st Century, or you like That's So Raven, or you don't like Wizards of Waverly Place, or you love Phineas and Ferb. I'm just using these as examples, by the way. I'm not giving my opinions of any of this stuff. Or you hated Phantom of the Megaplex, Multiplex, whatever the hell it was, Phantom of the movie theater, or you love Pair of Kings. You've got to make sure you say who is in it, how did it get developed, and talk to a creator, talk to a writer. Another thing I would also suggest is, like I said, you are organized is a big key. Also it takes up a lot of time. So keep in mind that when we did this, we started a while. Like this is like we're still going. Like we thought we would be over by 2012, and by December, and we still have the 2000s to go through. So it takes up a lot of time. So try to devote at least an hour a day, or maybe just a half hour to doing this, because it's going to take a long time, especially if you want to cover something. A lot of shows and movies. Another thing I should say, which also falls under what's difficult, is finding the stuff, because a lot of this stuff hasn't been released on DVD or VHS. We found that to be the big problem with Nickelodeon when we did a lot of shows, especially the 80s. A lot of this stuff wasn't available to the public. It was just if you watched it on the TV at that time period, you were lucky enough, but if you didn't have a VCR or you didn't record anything back then, we would have lost this stuff. It would fall into archives. So keep in mind that there's a lot of stuff you're not going to be able to find, even on the internet. And even though the internet is known for finding everything, there's a lot of shows we still couldn't find. Even the 90s stuff, it was very hard. Very few episodes, maybe one or two were uploaded, but not enough to give a full review.
Exactly.
So just remember, don't be discouraged. Do what you got, be organized, take a time out of your day to do this, and stick with it. Don't give up.
Definitely not.
It's not that hard to do, but like I said, it is very overwhelming. It does have its quirks, but, if you really want to do it, go for it. And try different ways of doing it. You could do it by podcast. You could do it on Manic Expression. You could write it. Or do a video, however you want to do it. James Rolfe, when he did his tribute to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he did a video. Same thing when he does his horror movies every October, which is Cinema Massacre. He always reviews. He does video blogs. We wrote a majority of our Nickelodeon shows on Manic Expression. So everybody's different. So whatever easier for you if you want to talk about it. But like I said, just make sure you get your facts. Make sure that you know what you're talking about, and make a list of all the stuff that you're going to be reviewing, and set a time frame from you, because we could be continuing to talk about Nickelodeon, but it would take us so long, and there's just so other topics that we want to discuss. So keep that in mind.
Definitely.
All right, Penny, the floor is all yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kevin. And you did a fantastic job by describing it. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Thank you very much.
Definitely, it takes a lot of time to do a tribute to any particular network. It could take forever. Another thing that you have to be able to concern about is, like Kevin said, you have to talk about all the shows that were out during the time. Especially the 80s ones were the most difficult. Very little videos were even shown. Like, for example, when I tried to do a review on Hocus Pocus, there was only the video that showed the introduction and the end. I couldn't see any episodes of it. And very little of it was basically reviewed. The only, which is why when you see the earlier posts on the blog about some of the shows in the 80s, I gave very vague descriptions about it. Hocus Pocus was one of them. Another one was Video Comic Live. Other ones were Kids' Rights. Some of them, there were even a couple of them that I didn't even write about. Like Reggie Jackson's World of Sports or Turkey Television was another one. Those shows were vaguely even remembered by most Nickelodeon fans, and very rarely you would see a full episode on them. Which is why a lot of the programs from the 80s are really hard to come by. I think with Disney Channel, it's a most likely chance that you'll be able to see all of them. You'll be able to see all the classics and some of the duds. Like I said, one of the major things that you have to be able to do when doing any tribute is you have to watch all the shows. You can't just skimp around. Like I said, there are a couple of exceptions for us. Like, when I wrote down the rules about what qualifies as a Nickelodeon show, that was able to cut a lot of the shows basically in half. We didn't have to talk about shows such as Muppet Babies or Pinky and the Brain or Animaniacs or Charlie Brown, even though that they did show Nickelodeon at one point, but they weren't Nickelodeon exclusive shows. Concentrate on the exclusives and the shows that were acquired from other countries and showed on Nickelodeon first. So basically, if a show was debuted on exclusively on Disney Channel, that counts. If a show was acquired from another country and then it was processed over to Disney Channel, that counts too. But, you know, that was how I did it, and maybe you have another idea of how you consider a Disney Channel program. You don't have to get people to interview you. Kevin and I, the reason why we did it was we wanted to do something a little bit more special. We wanted to broaden out something about Nickelodeon because we just love the network as a whole. We grew up with it, and having the dubious honor of talking to a lot of these people was just a blast. And we didn't think that it could be possible. If you can't get people to interview, that's fine. I mean, after all, we just did it because it was fun. You could do a whole bunch of other things. You could do podcasts about it. You can do interesting top 10s. You could basically do anything that you want. You could do like really interesting blogs about the Disney Channel shows compared to one or the other. Hey, I mean, the possibilities are endless. You know, maybe you can compare it to other shows, like, let's just say if you have Phil of the Future, and you compare it to The Journey of Alan Strange. Or if you have a show like Lizzie McGuire, you can compare it to something like Clarissa Explains It All. Or if you have something like, say, Pepper Ann or Recess, you can compare it to something like Rugrats, or Lloyd in Space. Or maybe you could talk about Fillmore, and how those people who worked on Rugrats were able to make those kinds of shows. You know, the people who worked on Nickelodeon also transcribed over to the Disney Channel show. Like Jerry Laybourne, who was the first president of Nickelodeon, she went over to the Disney Channel in 1996. And then there was also people like Joe Aslobier and Paul Germain, who created Recess and Lloyd in Space, and they worked on Rugrats. And then you have people like Jeff Swampy Marsh and Dan Povenmire. They worked on Rocko's Modern Life, and then eventually they went on to Phineas and Ferb. The possibilities are endless with what you could do for the Disney Channel. I give you high props if you can be able to do a tribute, because that would take a long time. Bottom of the line is definitely write down every single show in order and know when you're going to end it. Do something special that stands out amongst all the other ones that are doing retrospectives. Another one is definitely watch all of them as much as you can and give out straightforward facts and also your opinions, but not enough for you to make it like you've never seen the show and then you're trying to blow things off of your ass and saying that your opinion is superior. Other than that, if you are thinking about doing a tribute to anything, I say go for it.
Yep.
All right, next question comes from Ratinator, and he says, why Nickelodeon? you probably already answered this before, since it's obvious, but why Nickelodeon? Yes, we have answered this before.
The reason why we wanted to do a Nickelodeon tribute was because it hasn't been done before.
Well, it has been done before.
Grew up with Nickelodeon.
Well, Kevin, it has been done before, but not in the way that we are doing it.
Me and Patty grew up with Nickelodeon, and Nickelodeon had played a very huge part in our lives because it was, in the 1990s, Saturday morning cartoons were still going on. But then in 2000, it started to decline. But Nickelodeon had the upper hand because they were airing shows not just on Saturday mornings, but also from 3, 2 o'clock in the afternoon to like 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Which was unheard of at the time.
There were set of cartoons in the afternoon, like on Fox and the WB11 and UPN 9 on the afternoons. Nickelodeon was airing cartoons like, in the evening. And a lot of these shows had impacted both me and Patty's lives. I love Doug, Ren and Stimpy, and Rocco. Ariel Monsters, I grew up with these shows. This is coming from someone who would watch Ariel Monsters religiously and who went bananas when they released plushies and action figures. And also, these Ariel Monster dolls are, going for, insane amount of money on eBay. A Rocco doll alone goes for, $500 plus shipping. That's, the Heifer doll. These go nuts. So Nickelodeon had a huge impact in not just our lives, but everybody's lives. And even though there were other tributes, I don't think there has been anything more extensive or in-depth as me and Patty, because a lot of shows are long forgotten. We were just talking about how a lot of people don't remember Wienerville, and I remember back in the 90s when Wienerville was like the it live-action show. The Adventures of Pete and Pete was a staple in 90s young adult TV shows. This was a TV show that was just I would say a dark version of the Wonder Years.
Basically a very...
You had Ren and Stimpy and Rocco and Rugrats, and in the 80s it was kind of like a clean era. In the 90s when these shows appeared, it's these were the first shows that really spoke about body humor, like farts and poop and pee. And then you had Beavis and Butthead and you had The Simpsons, but it really was in the 91 where Ren and Stimpy and Rugrats really were the first shows, animated shows for a mainstream audience that spoke about, bodily functions as humor. Because back then, in the 80s, you didn't have any shows like that. And if you did, there was very minimal, very rarely if you watch a show in the 80s where the ass crack of a character would be very visible to the eye, or where you would see a character pick their nose and they would pull this green glob, or, they would talk about poop, or they would say crap. I think Ren and Stimpy, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, it was the first kid show to ever say the word crap. I'm not quite sure if there was other shows before that.
I think it might have been.
So there was a lot of history behind Nickelodeon, and we wanted to try something different, a lot of times people, when they do tributes, they like to do one thing. They'll talk about Masters of the Universe, they'll talk about He-Man. Well, you got the movie, you got the 1983, the 2002 or 3 reboot, the comic books and all that, but we wanted to do something that was more challenging, that was going to take us maybe about 3 decades to do. 4 to 3 decades to do.
Well, 35 years.
Not 35 years, I'm talking about decades.
Decade. Oh, yeah, decades, yeah.
So, there's a lot of going on with Nickelodeon, so that's why we wanted to do it. Mainly because it was part of our childhood, and we wanted to revisit our youth. And I guess we wanted to take everybody from Manic Expression on the ride with us while we go down memory lane.
Yeah, definitely, and that's basically our motto. Talking about our favorite movies, TV shows, and everything else in between. Definitely wanting you to come along for the ride. Why we wanted to do it, just like Kevin said, we wanted everybody who grew up with Nickelodeon to be able to share their experiences of how they grew up with it. We have a lot of people who talk about that they grew up with Rugrats and Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life and SpongeBob and Teenage Robot and what have you. And, talking about, like, the Christmas specials and the Halloween specials and the Thanksgiving specials were also really special, the ones that I wrote down. Also, another thing is that you have to understand how influential Nickelodeon was. We already discussed about it in the first episode of the podcast, but let me just reiterate. Around the 80s, it was true that Nickelodeon was mostly focusing on educational stuff. But you have to understand that was huge back then. There weren't a lot of shows out there that focused on children. It was literally the very first kids network. When you talk about shows from the late 70s all the way out to the 80s, they only showed their programs exclusively on Saturday morning. And the majority of their shows were focusing on toys and other means of action figures, like G.I. Joe, like He-Man, like Gem, like My Little Pony, like Rainbow Bright, what have you. And something like Nickelodeon...
Well, I wouldn't go too as far... Hold on, not to interrupt you. I wouldn't go so as far as says that the 80s was a very commercialized era. I mean, Nickelodeon did their fair share of commercializing their stuff. I mean, when Ren and Stimpy hit the airwaves and Rugrats, there were Rugrat dolls, there were Ren and Stimpy dolls.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm not talking...
didn't base... I mean, I know what you're saying, that they didn't base a lot of shows on toys or comics, but take in consideration that a lot of the stuff that they adapted, this was stuff that people wanted to see as shows. Like, the real Ghostbusters was based on a movie. Ghostbusters is a classic, and I would have loved to watch the adventures of Ray, of Peter, Egon, Ray, and Winston, and Slimer, and Janine, or He-Man. I mean, yeah, it was the toys, but it took us to Eternia. It took us to another place that escaped from Earth, and you had these crazy creatures and these scary villains, and it mixed it demons and spirits and wizards and magic and witchcraft and all that, and it was a kid show.
I'm not saying anything bad about it, Kevin. I'm not. I love those shows just as much as you do.
No, I'm just saying. I know what you're saying, but I'm just.
Right. You get what we're saying. But the thing of it is that what made Nickelodeon so different than all the other shows that came out during the 80s was that, you see, Nickelodeon was gearing towards kids first, and it was creating new concepts that weren't even thought possible. Who would have thought that in around, the 80s there would have been a show about farts and poop jokes and something so surreal you wouldn't even think there was something like that for kids? Who would have thought that something along the line that a show basically about talking babies would be one of the most popular shows to ever grace Nickelodeon? Who would have thought that maybe a show about an average normal kid, something that you would see live action, would be in cartoon form? Or something about scary monsters. Sure, you had things like My Pet Monster or something like Ghostbusters, but still. When you see something like Our Real Monsters, the characters were extremely creative and it had a really interesting concept. And then shows like Rocko's Modern Life had an edge to it. You can go back and watch it as an adult, and you find out that it had so many jokes in it that flew back into your head. And then you have also the live-action shows, especially some for kids. I mean, sure, you had things like Full House, Silver Spoons, and all these, Saved by the Bell and all that good stuff. But you have to understand that live-action shows for Nickelodeon were beyond unique for its time. In a time in which you had something like Stuff at Home or Stuff at High School, you had shows about going over to a ranch or going over to a summer camp, focusing on a female protagonist. And shows like having a girl with superpowers and having a show... an African-American cast for kids, or something like a sketch comedy show. It was something unheard of. And also, not to mention, a really strange show that kind of took like the concept of the Wonder Years and experienced of childhood and brought in a very surreal, indie-like quality. It was something unseen in any program, and Nickelodeon was the one that brought it out in a way that made the network so unique and so fresh for its time. we wanted to discuss about it, and we wanted to show how much of a huge impact that the network was. You have to understand that without Nickelodeon, we wouldn't have programs like MTV or Cartoon Network or anything like that. So it's something that you have to appreciate. It was a network that was for the kids by people who understand of what to bring out for them. So yeah, that's why we decided to talk about Nickelodeon. I also discussed that, who knows, maybe 5 years down the line we'll do Cartoon Network, because Cartoon Network was another network that we grew up with, and we have a lot to talk about with that, but like I said, that's not until much, much later. Okay, next question comes from Brick Club 85, and he says, what are your current favorite programs, and how do they stack up to the old school favorites?
Well, my favorite show, Nickelodeon show right now, is definitely Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I've been saying this ever since we did our first impressions, that I just love the voice cast. Sean, Jason Biggs, Craig Sipes, Sean Astin, Rob Paulson, especially, who I consider an idol, Mae Whitman, Holton Lee, Nolan North, Kevin Michael Richardson, Clancy Brown, and also, if you just give me 1 minute to find me...
Louis Black.
The gentleman who played Fish Face.
Go ahead, take your time.
Christian Lance.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that they're all very brilliant, and I love that they are... I love this new incarnation a lot. It combines elements of the 1984 comic book, the 1987 TV series, the 2003 series. It even has some references to Next Mutation, IDW comics. It has a lot of elements. Would I say how it stacks up to the original? There's no comparison, because these are both this is a different incarnation, but it's still a great one, and I highly recommend it. Definitely, really, definitely highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite current Nickelodeon shows are just SpongeBob SquarePants and the Fairly Odd Parents. I mean, I'm really not into Marvin and iCarly and Victorious and True Jackson VP, and I never really got into the Troop. Super Ninjas I don't like at all. Planet Sheen I hate with a passion, and I find it to be very annoying. The Ninja Turtles we will discuss in our next podcast, which we will devote half the podcast to talking about the history of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So there really isn't anything else new on Nickelodeon that I can say I really like.
Well, what about Fanboy and Chum Chum and Robot and Monster?
On Robot and Monster, I love Robot and Monster, actually. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. At first, I didn't think I was going to like it. I thought it was going to be another knockoff of Fanboy and Chum Chum, because, there are some similarities. You have you have the lead, the two, there are two leads in the show. They're both addicted to something that's very odd, and I really thought this was going to capitalize on Monsters, Inc., monsters, and, Monster versus Aliens, with monsters and robots coexisting with one another. But it's actually a very funny and hilarious show, and I love it. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I did. It's a really great show, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't really talk about those two shows in particular. Would you consider them underrated?
No. I think they're very underrated. Oh, yeah, very underrated, I think so.
Yeah, because when you're talking about kids watching particular shows nowadays, they're going into stuff on Cartoon Network, such as Regular Show and Adventure Time and Young Justice, Invasion. And then you go over to Disney Channel, like Phineas and Ferb. But when it comes to Nickelodeon programs, I've actually talked to a lot of kids and teens about what they're currently watching, and when it comes to Fanboy and Chum Chum or Robot and Monster, there's no mention of it. And if there is, Fanboy and Chum Chum gets a ton of hate. In fact, most people consider Fanboy and Chum Chum to be the absolute worst Nicktoon that has ever been aired.
Who said that?
A ton of people. Look it up on YouTube or look it up on top 10 worst Nicktoons list, which we'll eventually get into, by the way. That's going to be another podcast, but yeah. I've read along the line that Fanboy and Chum Chum is extremely annoying and just too over the top, but you have to consider this. Those were basically a lot of the shows that came out during the 90s. It was about being over the top and goofy and having a lot of pop culture references, so it was trying to capitalize on those kind of things. I think a lot of people are trying to get into the more serious, story-driven sort of thing.
And Planet Sheen's not on that list?
Planet Sheen is huge on that list. It is panned by a whole bunch of people as being awful.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't think of anybody who likes that show. Which we'll definitely talk about when we get there. There's a ton of problems with Planet Sheen and a lot of the really bad Nicktoons, but like I said, we'll get there when we get there. Alright. My current favorite shows. I really love Legend of Korra. It takes the concept of being around in the same universe while introducing a whole bunch of characters or characters that we've grown to know and love and expands upon it.
Actually, not to cut you off, I actually heard there was a lot of controversy with fans that they didn't like the way how older Toph looks. I heard a lot of people said she looks very manly and that she didn't look... Because they said that even though she was supposed to be a tomboy, a lot of people expected her to sort of be very good-looking because they figured that as she got older, she appreciated who she was, and that in previous Avatar episodes, like there was the one with the they did different stories.
Oh yeah, the Tales of Ba Sing Se, yes.
They showed Toph, and even though she's she's a tomboy, they put her this makeup, and she looked very she was adorable, and there was an episode, I seen a clip of it on TV where she brings the villain brilliantly played by Steve Bloom. By the way, I'm not a big fan of Legend of Korra because I don't like the actress who plays Korra.
Oh yeah, Janet Varney.
Yeah, I actually think the only one who I like is he's from Married with Children. I forgot his name, and I hate
David. I think his name is David Baustino, something like. I think that's what his name is.
I don't know. Well, it's got like I don't know if I don't think that's his name, but he's the Dante Bosco are the only two characters that I think are the only good voice actors I like on the show.
Well,
J.K. Simmons.
There you go, J.K. Simmons.
They're the only three, and I can't forget Dee Bradley Baker, who does the animal voices. They're the only ones who I feel are best for the show.
And not to mention that Dee Bradley Baker also voices Tarlok.
To me, as the main characters, even though Jeff Bennett, I love Jeff Bennett, he does the intros and all that, they're the only actors, Steve Bloom, Married with Children's Bud, Dante Bosco, and Dee Bradley Baker, are the only voice actors I like on that whole show. Me, personally, I feel like all the actors on the show who are voicing these young people sound too old. They sound like themselves. I don't know why. I would have loved it if they got all the previous voice actors like Mae Whitman to come back and do the voices of these characters. I know they wanted to get older people to do it, even though Mae Whitman is an adult. I mean, everyone who started on the show, they weren't that young. They were...
teenagers.
They weren't kids. Yeah, they weren't kids. They were teenagers, so they provided the voices not to their age, but they still were able to sound like kids, but they're older now, so I don't understand that. But a lot of them, including Korra, she sounds way too old. She sounds like she's 45. She sounds like she's the actress's age who's providing her voice. And that was the reason why I didn't like the show. But, I'm throwing myself off, but there was one scene where they were taking Steve Bloom's character on trial, and they showed, I think that was the first appearance of adult Toph. And, Patty, you can give your voice opinion on this. They said that she was very ugly looking and that she looked very mannish. And that her cheekbones were very thin, like a skeleton, and that they said that she was poorly drawn, and that she didn't look like Toph. She looked like a man.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's your 2 cents on that?
Well, yes, there are a couple of problems with Legend of Korra. First of all, I felt that...
Man, Toph. That's what I want to talk to you.
Oh, Toph. Well, yeah, the drawing of Toph is a little bit off. But, yeah, it's not that she looked bad. It's just that, even though that she does walk around in her uniform as, being a metal-bending police officer, it would have been nice if she was, if she accepted her feministic side a little bit more. But just a tiny bit, just to show off that she still is the lovable tomboy that we grew up to know. But yeah, little touches like that, but that's just nitpicking. Another thing that, there are a couple of flaws with Legend of Korra. One of them is definitely the ending. If a lot of you guys haven't seen the ending, then I'm not going to spoil too much, but I'm just going to say this. It was way too fast. I would have thought that Amon would have been, like, a very recurring character, just like Fire Lord Ozai was. But... by some crazy turn of events, he's no longer going to be in the Legend of Korra series. We're going to go focusing on another thing, which, I would have liked it if Amon would have stayed along a little bit longer, because Amon was such a cool villain. He was so threatening, and he had a presence to him that got me a little bit fearful for Korra. And, they're like I said, the voice casting is a little bit hit and miss for me. There are some people which are incredible. You have David Baustino, who does Bolin, which is really cool. And then you have J.K. Simmons as Aang's son, and you have characters you have a couple of other characters that are really good too. And other than that, to me, Mako is not as fleshed out or brought out as, say, Zuko.
What'd you say, Patty? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mako, I wish, would have been brought out a little bit more like Zuko. Mako has a really basic backstory. His parents are killed, and him and his brother are left homeless. But to me, he's a little bit bland. I just wish that he would have been fleshed out a tiny bit more. In Bolin, he still has that really nice, funny edge like Zuko. I mean, not Zuko, Sokka. But he is a little bit different, obviously. Some of the characters are a tiny bit bland and basic, but I feel as the series continues on, maybe they'll be fleshed out a tad bit more. And who knows, maybe Legend of Korra will become really good. But like I said, besides those things, Legend of Korra is absolutely amazing. It's just as good as the original series is. Completely different from Avatar: The Last Airbender, but at the same time it feels familiar, which I can really appreciate, because if you have a spin-off show like Planet Sheen, in which it focuses on one character, and that one character is absolutely awful, and it's unfamiliar to the entire Jimmy Neutron universe, it's so bad. That's a way of doing a spin-off horribly. Legend of Korra is a way of doing a spin-off awesome. And then you have shows such as Brain Surge and the new Figure It Out and Splat-A-Lot, which I really do enjoy kids' game shows. And then you have the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then you have House of Anubis. The current SpongeBob, the current Fairly Odd Parents are really good. And, other than that, I'm not really focusing on all the newer stuff right now, because I get home really late, and I don't have time to watch, I do have time to watch it on demand, which is really good. It gets me caught up with a lot of things, but those are mostly the shows I'm focused on. Alright, so, okay, final question comes from James Baven, and he says, anyway, last question comes from James Baven, and he says, what are your favorite and least favorite authors?
Favorite authors would be R.L. Stine. I don't have a least favorite author, though. I love Stephen King and Patricia Miranda.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I'm not that good of a writer. I mean, there are a couple of things I'm currently working on, but, nothing that has been published as of now. I'm still working on a couple of my books. Still working on Journey of an Offbeat and The Birth, Rise, and Redemption of String. And then there's also, a couple of other things like that. But, those will come out hopefully really soon. My favorite authors. I've always been a huge fan of the classics. I like Herman Melville. I like William Shakespeare. I like Charles Dickens. I like Jane Austen. I like the Bronte sisters. Kate Chopin, Ernest Hemingway, Jack London, John Steinbeck, all those kind of classic American and world authors. I like J.K. Rowling. I like J.R.R. Tolkien. I like C.S. Lewis. I have a huge amount of respect for Suzanne Collins, the woman who writes The Hunger Games. In fact, it's an interesting fact to know that she was also one of the head writers of Clarissa Explains It All and The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo. And, let's see what else. My least favorite authors. 2 words, Stephanie Myers. Fuck you, Twilight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have 2 people that I hate with a passion. Stephanie Myers, I hope you choke on a cock. And I hope you choke on a cock so hard that when the police find you, they see you on the floor, writhing like convulsing like the little bitch that you are. And the author of The Hunger Games, because we all know that not only are you a piece of shit, but you totally ripped off Stephen King's The Running Man.
And yeah, that concludes episode 5 of Casual Chats. We're hoping that who knows how long we're going to be on, but if we are on for a long time, I'm hoping that you guys enjoy the ride. I hope that you guys have fun. We want to say thank you for the awesome support that we've gotten over the past year. And to that, we'll catch you later, and I hope that you enjoy the next one. Bye-bye.